Hello and welcome to Sentimental Elephants, a musical journey. I'm Rob, and we will be starting things off with our very first entry in alphabetical order. We'll be starting with the letter B. Why are we starting with B? First letter in the alphabet is, of course, A, but we're going to start with B because, I'll go into some reasons, but just basically everything kind of starts with B on two different levels. I'll be touching on one and going more in depth into another. So B is a very big letter. B is for big. B is for big star. B is for big country. It's for James Brown, David Bowie, Bauhaus, the Byrds, the Beach Boys. Very notably, B starts with the Beatles. I'm not going to go too much into the Beatles, but I will say it does kind of start with the Beatles, and at least the sort of the earliest days. I'm certainly going to come back to the Beatles, I'm sure, a number of times. But I just want to mention, besides the fact that one of the few sort of pop or rock albums that my parents had, my mother did have a copy of the second Beatles album, with the Beatles. I believe it belonged to her brother. I wouldn't swear to that. I never got to meet my uncle. He passed away before I was born. But she did have a copy of it, the Canadian issue of with the Beatles, which said on the front, Beatlemania with the Beatles. But a bit more significantly, when I was quite young, my parents let me stay up late at night to watch the cartoon movie with the big yellow submarine in it. I jokingly refer to that as possibly the worst mistake they ever made, because that kind of planted the seed that later grew into full-blown music fanaticism. That's where I first kind of got an idea of music other than just something to be on in the background. As there's open up a whole new world. There's like this place you could lose yourself in through music. You can go into Pepperland and enjoy these wonderful songs on a whole different level. But the main B I want to talk about here is B stands for, trying not to get the glare on that, Kate Bush. Yes, Kate Bush, we would file under B. That's basic music indexing. Wouldn't file under K. Individual artists, first letter of their last name. Bands, first letter of the first name of the band's name. The does not count. Otherwise, you have a disproportionately large T section in your collection. The does not count, however, A does count. So a certain ratio would go under A, but The Clash, The Doors, etc., C, D, etc. I've had a bit of a frustrating time in my life, sometimes explaining music indexing to people. But anyway, I digress. So Kate Bush. Okay, just whip out the old Wikipedia article here. Catherine Bush, CBE, born 30th of July, 1958. Happy birthday, Kate. This is the 30th of July. English singer, songwriter, pianist, dancer, and record producer. Topped the charts with her debut single, Wuthering Heights, 25 UK top 40 singles, etc., etc., etc. Just a quick note to any new Kate Bush fans who may have discovered her through the use of Running Up That Hill on the most recent season, at the time of recording, of the Netflix series Stranger Things. Welcome. Glad you're discovering her music. I think you're going to be in for an enjoyable trip. I hope you get as much out of her art as I have. But I'm just going to talk more about my own personal story and my experience with her. Going to flash back to, what was the year? 1983. I was 13 years old. I felt kind of on the verge of something. I was a year away from starting high school. Music was starting to get more of interest to me. There's a big change in the presentation of music at that point. I've been just basically listening to the radio, having that on in the background a lot. But this was the video revolution. Now, big focus on the video revolution was MTV. Speaking as a young Canadian boy, we did not have MTV. There was a few years away from our own national music network, Much Music, and even a number of years after that before I actually had access to that. But in the wake of MTV, there was a variety of different shows on broadcast television that would show videos. We had, at the time, I had access to, through cable, to American channels. So NBC had Friday night videos. In Canada, there was Good Rockin' Tonight, also on Friday nights. So that, Friday nights, I'd be spending a lot of time watching videos. And there were a few different little syndicated shows that would show up on like weekend mornings. Honestly, I can't remember the titles of them, but they did exist. And there was America's Top 10. It was hosted by Casey Kasem, but this was a different one. I'm watching one Saturday or Sunday morning, and as I said, I just felt on the verge of something at that point in my life. I didn't know quite what it was, but like I said, my music tastes were starting. I wasn't as much into music as as I was about to be, but I felt on the verge of a breakthrough. So as I was saying, one weekend morning, I'm watching this show. I can't remember the name of it, but they would show videos, and they tended to be usually the less big name videos, and the hostess holds up this record cover and starts talking about this artist that I'd never heard of before, and saying, yes, this singer, songwriter, producer, doing all of these things on her own, Kate Bush. And I remember my reaction at the time being, what is she, some sort of feminist? Hey, wait, sorry, what was that, 13, 14-year-old me? I beg your pardon? I don't know why I had that reaction. It's a pretty stupid reaction. I'm trying not to put myself down, but I'll just readily say that was dumb. Didn't even really fit with my memories of my attitudes at that time. But that's what it was. I don't know. I know. Follies of youth, I suppose. And she plays the video for Sat in Your Lap. And this is, I will tell you, a very, very strange song. I'd never heard anything like that before in my life. With these sort of very pounding drums, or voices going very low and then very high, shrieking. The melodies are bizarre. The whole imagery of that video is quite unusual. Side note, I'm going to say this. Recently, I had the opportunity to watch that video. I looked it up, and I'm going to tell you, it's like nearly 40 years later, and I still have no idea what that video is supposed to be about. It's an unusual one. It's very very arty. But anyway, I'm watching the video, and I'm like, what is this? I don't know. This is very strange. I was not getting it, and I'm not responding to it at all. And then another bizarre kind of thought, so I'm embarrassed by decades later. But I'm like looking at her, and I'm thinking, I was barely a teenager, but I'm thinking, God help me, should I ever find a woman like that attractive? Again, that's like one of the dumbest thoughts that's ever gone through my mind. But I mention it because very soon after, like literally seconds after, I'm like staring at this picture and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, it went that quickly. And it's like a light went on, and I'm becoming fascinated by this song. I don't understand it. It's strange, and it's scary, and it's intense, and it's just completely pulling me in. And I'm like, I need to know more about this music. What is this? I've never knew this was sort of possible. And I'm just going to take a moment here, pardon me. But the lyrics, when I sort of look them up, they're still kind of bizarre. It's hard to, quite hard to, found it a bit hard to make out what specifically the meaning was. But I could kind of pick up on it when on later times I heard it. Just pulling up the Wikipedia article. Like I said, you can look this up on your own if you want. Um, Lyrics of the song deal with feelings of existential frustration and the quest for knowledge. And I was kind of getting some of that, and I could kind of pick up on that. Now that's starting to relate to me. Like I say, I'm, going on the verge from being, a kid, a public school kid, to being in high school. Life was good. Life was going to be changing in a lot of ways for me. Um, this, and I'm just sensing something. I need to follow this. Now, again, I'm like 13, 14. I don't, it's not like today, and it's, not even like it would be later a few years. I don't, a few years from the point I'm talking about, whereas like I could, a bit more chance to maybe get access to this album. This is this strange thing that's beaming to me from another planet, and how do I get this again? I don't know. I don't have like, I'm just a kid. I don't have like money. I don't have a way to go get records, to go find them. But I was like, this artist is locked in my head, and she's not like she's being played on the radio or anything. I remember at one point, sometimes afterwards, I don't know, it was like, weeks or months or something. It was like one of the stations I was listening to did play that song. I was like, oh my God. I had to focus and listen to it. And it was like I remembered it. And it was just as scary and just as beautiful as I recalled. And, then it was gone. And it was, it was about 13, 14 at the time. It was later. It was in 1984. So I guess some number of months after that. School trip that was going to Washington, D.C. for a week. And my parents, my parents gave me some spending money to pick up something, while I was there. And I was very much focused. I was going to find this album, and I was going to get it. And I did. I found it in a store, and I could see that there were other Kate Bush albums there. I said, okay, she's got other albums. But I was, very focused on getting this one with this one song on it. And I found it, but I could only find it on vinyl. I was looking for it on cassette, but I couldn't find it on vinyl. Now, I know with benefit of history, I know most people will acknowledge vinyl as being a superior format to cassette, but there's sort of little practical matters I was thinking of, which is just that if I got it on cassette, I might have a chance of borrowing a cassette player from somebody. Somebody else on the trip might have a chance to listen to it sooner. But with vinyl, I wouldn't be able to listen to it until I got home. But I was very focused on getting this album, so I bought the vinyl copy. I remember, kind of putting it in my suitcase and trying to pad it, because this thing I'm worried about is it's like, okay, I want to get this home all in one piece without scratching or breaking it. And as I say, it was like precious cargo. I was trying to hold there. There was actually one person on that trip on the bus ride back that was renting their Walkman, their cassette player to people who's like, oh, you want to listen to some music? Well, you pay me some money. And that's the mercenary, materialistic bunch that was kind of around me during that point. But I carefully transported this all the way home, and I remember when we got home, my father and my older sister were picking me up from the school at the end of the trip and taking me home. I remember being asked, like, oh, what'd you do? How was it? Did you get anything? And I just sort of casually mentioned, oh, yeah, I bought, I remember one thing I bought I did buy one cassette. I bought it was like the EP of another B band, Big Country, for the Wonderland EP, which is a great collection of songs. And I said, yeah, and I got The Dreaming by Kate Bush, and my older sister says, you bought a Kate Bush album? And this is like the first and maybe even only time in my life I have any recollection of uh, actually impressing her in any way. Um, and it's like, yeah, I did. And I was like, oh wow, that's. And you just think, oh yeah, that's really cool. She's a great artist because she was familiar. She's my older sister. She's a bit older and cooler and more connected and more in the know. And I seem to recall that it was late-ish at night. It's the weekend, but the house, like everybody's gone to bed, and I'm staying up a bit late. I've got the speakers turned off. I've got the headphones on, and that's my first time listening to that album. And "Sat in Your Lap" was the first song, and okay, I was like, I remembered, and all of these other songs are unwinding, and they're all strange and unsettling and it's kind of terrifying, and some of them are kind of sad and beautiful and just richly detailed, and there's just this depth, and like I say, it's this my point in my own personal journey. I'm kind of going from childhood to tweens, and about to be into high school and all the challenges of that, and adolescence. I'm just finding my emotions are changing, and this album is matching that. And there's it was whenever I say the album literally changed my life, I'm talking about that. It's like the scene in The Wizard of Oz, where it goes from black and white to color, and like all of a sudden my knowledge of music is just my perception of it's just completely shifting. And I listened to it all, I listened to that album a fair amount of times. And at one point, I'm at the local flea market, and there's, I believe it was a flea market, and there was somebody there who would sell T-shirts, and I think they were T-shirts, but definitely pins with like different individual musicians. And I saw a Kate Bush pin, so I got it, and I put it on my jacket or whatever it was I was wearing, and wear that. And so I started wearing that to school, and that opened up a whole new door, because a lot of people think, "Who the hell is that?" And there's a bunch of other people who had seen some of her videos, and they didn't like them, and they're like, "You listen to that? Like, what's wrong with you? How can you listen to that stuff?" And I was kind of a bullied kid. I was kind of pushed around, and I didn't have high self-esteem. I don't really now, but this kind of was striking a bit of a different chord with me, where it was like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I'm just weird, and yeah, everybody's telling me I'm a loser, so I guess I am one. And I thought, no, you know what? This is amazing. This music is really something wonderful, and it's not like anything else I've ever heard. And frankly, if you don't get it, then that's your loss. I felt for the first time like maybe I'm not just weird. Maybe maybe there's something sort of special about me that I'm picking up on, where I'm able to pick up these things. Maybe I'm different, but different's not a bad thing. And that kind of continued for a while. So it's like I'd be the other discovery around that time was hearing "Owner of a Lonely Heart" by Yes. And that's not necessarily the it might be a lot of people's first song they heard, but it's not necessarily the key song of their catalog. But that, and we'll touch on Yes later, spun me off saying, well, let's listen to the early stuff. And that got me into progressive rock, which is definitely I know it's not necessarily the coolest genre of music, but it was different from the music that everybody else was listening to. And I was just realizing, you know what? I'm kind of going to my own different beat. I'm marching to the beat of my own drummer. And I started kind of accepting that. And also, uh, wearing the Kate Bush pin, every once in a while, somebody might come up to me, and once in a long while, frequently it was like a very nice, rather pretty girl would say, "Oh, Kate Bush. I like Kate Bush. She's great. I'm glad you like Kate Bush." And I'm a shy kid, and pretty girls aren't really always talking to me that much, so that was a bit of a positive spin on that. And then a few years after that, that's when Hounds of Love came out. That's when Running Up That Hill had its first run up the charts, and more people knew her music, and some other people were getting into it. I felt a little bit vindicated. It's like a sense like, yeah, I was on this a bit early. That said, I still had to, I faced people with really negative reactions to her music. I remember hanging out with two people. They're friends of mine. They're in they're musicians, and they're like leafing through this music magazine, and just talking about the articles in it. And I was just kind of like looking over their shoulder, and it came on a picture of Kate Bush. And before I could say anything, I said, "Oh my God, it's Kate Bush." And one of them says, "I hate Kate Bush," and I said, "Kate Bush should be destroyed." I'm like, really? I try to avoid saying that about any music that I don't like, but it's like, So I was like, I realized her work isn't necessarily for everyone. I get it. But there's a lot of mystery to it. There's darkness, there's beauty. Some of it's scary, some of it's kind of funny. She does have a sense of humor, and there's it just reaches places that I never really knew existed before, and I owe a lot to Kate. So now, for any new fans of Kate Bush, this album, it's my favorite album. It still is. I'm just gonna say, probably wouldn't recommend to start there. You want to jump in the deep end? That's as deep as the deep end gets. But I'm maybe ease in. Just work your way up to that one, because it is a dark, scary place. Hounds of Love is an excellent album. It's a great place to start. You get a lot from it. There's a great compilation called The Whole Story. And it does have a few tracks from Dreaming, and it's got songs from throughout her career. So if you listen to the songs from that, again, my usual sort of translation, I'm talking about buying albums, and it's like, okay, download, stream, whatever. But those would be good places to start. But when you get to the Dreaming, you're in for something very very profound. I think very unique. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Again, if anybody has any questions, please post them in the comments. But thank you so much for listening to me. We'll be, as I say, doubling back. Next entry will be the letter A, and then we'll go C, D, E, F, G, etc. Thank you so much for your time, and like, share, and subscribe, and hope everybody has a great day afternoon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.